Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and turn on the bell notification. So, let's listen to a mysterious story of a jinn's revenge in today's video. The mysterious journey begins. Sahiba was driving alone toward her favorite tourist destination. She was the only beloved daughter of business tycoon Sarfraz Sahab, living life on her own terms. Her life's motto was to enjoy every moment. Since childhood, there hadn't been a single moment where she hadn't truly lived life. Being her parents' only spoiled child, she had taken full advantage of that privilege. Sahiba had been residing in Quetta, Balochistan, with her parents for the past 7 months. She had a deep interest in tourism. The reason for coming to Quetta was to let her father handle a business project while she explored the scenic spots of Balochistan. The tourist locations in Quetta were serene, natural springs, mountains, and landscapes that brought peace to the soul. Sahiba especially loved a place called Green Resort. She had visited it several times with her friends. But this time, she felt like going alone. It was 4 in the evening, the month of October, the winds were chilly, and the weather a bit cold. Her parents had left for Islamabad earlier that day for an important week-long meeting. To avoid boredom, she initially planned to go alone to Green Resort, but then thought maybe she should go with friends. She called her friend Afshan, who declined because of her cousin's engagement, and invited Sahiba to join the function. But Sahiba didn't like such weddings or engagements. Hearing Afshan's refusal made Sahiba irritable. Instead of inviting more friends, she decided to go alone. She got ready in a few minutes. When she was about to leave, the guards requested to accompany her, but Sahiba wanted some alone time in a peaceful place and refused. The guards tried to contact Sarfraz Sahab, but he didn't answer, likely busy in a meeting. The road to Green Resort. The car moved toward its destination. The song Tum Chale Aao, Pahadan Ki Chasm was playing. The wind was cold, and the sky was overcast. Leaving the populated area behind, Sahiba immersed herself in the natural beauty of the journey. While on the road to Green Resort, she passed a deserted area where she noticed a hut built beside a mountain. In front of it were countless livestock and some children playing. The scene surprised her at first, but she dismissed it, assuming they were local shepherds. By the time she reached Green Resort, it was 6 p.m. and darkness had fallen. As soon as Sahiba stepped out of the car, chilly wind gusts welcomed her. The cold wind sent a shiver through her body. She parked her car and went to a small canteen near the gate to order tea and French fries. Then she sat on a bench near an artificial lake. The resort glittered with lights in the darkness, giving the impression of daytime. Ducks swam here and there in the lake. In front of the lake was a mountain, which appeared grey under the lights, adding to the beauty of the scenery. After sipping tea and enjoying the moment, Sahiba thought of heading back. But suddenly, heavy rain began. The staff opened a small room built in the middle of the lake for her, equipped with a bed and other comforts. Sahiba decided it was best to wait out the rain there. The rain, the fear, the knock. The rain just wouldn't stop, and for the first time in her life, Sahiba felt fear. Around 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. In a trembling voice, she asked, "Who is it?" A staff member replied, "Madam, since the resort is located at the foot of the mountains, water flowing from the mountains has entered the resort. Your room may soon be flooded. Please relocate to a safer place." After thinking for a moment, Sahiba opened the door. She was stunned by what she saw. The rainwater had turned into a flood. The entire resort was submerged. She asked the staff member to help her reach her car. He managed to escort her through the water to her car. Sahiba started to drive back. The staff suggested, "There's a mosque a little ahead. You should spend the night there and head home in the daylight. It's not safe to travel alone at night." But Sahiba, too frightened by now, rolled up her window without replying and began her return journey. The rain pounded so hard it sounded like the windshield would shatter. She realized the journey back was going to be very difficult. She should have listened to the staff. Alone. Bad weather. A deserted road. The car suddenly stopped. "What now?" Sahiba muttered, anxious. She couldn't just sit in the car in such weather. She stepped out, and surprisingly, the rain stopped. This shocked her. She popped the hood and inspected the engine. Everything seemed fine, though she didn't know much about cars. She had picked up a few things from her dad. Closing the hood in despair, she looked around. Under a large tree in the distance, she saw a woman in red clothes cooking something. As Sahiba got closer, a disgusting stench overwhelmed her. Holding back nausea, she called out, "Excuse me?" "Hello?" No reply. Sahiba gently touched the woman's shoulder and repeated, "Excuse me?" The woman froze. A voice echoed from deep within her. "Speak." Sahiba knew something was wrong, but bravely said, "My car broke down. Can you send someone to help?" The woman let out a terrifying, echoing laugh. Sahiba jumped back in fear. The Jinn bride appears. When the woman turned, Sahiba screamed. It was a bride-like figure in red, but with a horrifying face. Deep black pits instead of eyes. 2 snakes hanging from her nostrils, slithering toward Sahiba. A foul-smelling dark liquid poured from her mouth, soaking her dress. The smell from the pot became unbearable, and Sahiba vomited. She ran toward her car. Turning to look back, she saw the snakes chasing her. The woman stood still, laughing maniacally. Sahiba jumped into her car, locked the doors, and miraculously, the car started. She sped away. In the rearview mirror, she saw the snakes following her, but after a while, they disappeared. The flooded bridge and a desperate decision. She had barely gone halfway back when she reached a flood-damaged bridge. It had collapsed. Crossing it would be suicide. Sahiba sat in her car, crying, blaming herself. She thought about returning to the resort. It was the only option. But that road was deserted. And after what had happened, it wasn't safe either. The broken bridge would take 4 to 6 days to rebuild if the rain stopped. And the rain showed no signs of stopping. Return to the resort. She turned the car back toward the resort. When she reached the spot where she'd seen the woman under the tree, there was nothing. No tree, no woman. She thanked God. But when she reached the resort, there wasn't a single soul there. Only water everywhere. The mountains still gushed like waterfalls. It felt like the universe itself was trying to kill her. She sat in her car and wept aloud. In this moment of helplessness, she knew she had to rely on herself. If she gave up, death would surely take her. She knew going back toward Quetta was pointless. She had to move forward into the unknown. It was rocky, the rain still falling, and the sky thundered with black clouds. None of it was in Sahiba's favor. She had no idea where fate was taking her, but the fear of death, the fear of being alone, and the fear of this haunted wilderness kept her moving forward. The hotel staff had mentioned a mosque beyond the resort. But despite traveling a good distance, Sahiba saw no mosque. Instead, she reached a fork in the road, where the path split into 2 directions. This was a critical decision. A friend had once told her, one path leads into a desolate wasteland. The other goes to a small village near Ziyarat, a famous tourist town just 15 minutes ahead. Sahiba hesitated. Which path should she choose? It all came down to luck. Saying in the name of God, she picked one of the paths. It was extremely rugged, full of boulders, with water streaming down from the mountains like waterfalls, cutting through the rocky terrain. Landslides were a real threat. And then it happened. As Sahiba carefully passed near a mountainside, a huge boulder dislodged and crashed just behind her car. It gave a hard jolt, just a second late, and it would have hit her. The car swerved, but Sahiba managed to slam the brakes in time. That moment saved her life. After hours of slow, nerve-wracking travel, she finally reached a place where 2 mountains ended, and a new range began, like a gateway to something unknown. The rain had eased into a light drizzle, and in the distance, she could hear the jingling bells of goats and sheep. This sound brought hope. Where there are animals, there are humans. If she could just reach human civilization, she'd be safe. Among the nomads. Sahiba drove ahead and discovered a small green valley between the mountains. There were goats everywhere, and a group of nomads, men, women, and children. Seeing her vehicle, the people rushed toward her. Sahiba's face showed disappointment. The nomads themselves looked disaster-struck. One of the women stepped forward and spoke something in Pashto. Sahiba replied in Urdu, and it became clear that neither could understand the other. Just then, the woman called out to someone. Nija, Nija, come here. A sweet girl around 16 or 17 years old rushed forward and addressed Sahiba in fluent Urdu. My name is Nija. Who are you? Why are you here? Sahiba felt relieved, finally, humans. And someone who spoke her language. I'm Sahiba. I got stranded here because of the rain. Can you give me shelter until the weather improves? Nija explained everything to the others in Pashto. An old woman said something bitterly and walked away, followed by a few other women who gave Sahiba angry looks. The rest of the women began whispering. Eventually, the men were informed. An elderly man stepped forward and addressed the women. One of them went off and returned with a large tribal shawl. The man placed it on Sahiba's head. Nija smiled and said, Our tribe has granted you shelter. You are safe here as one of our own daughters. You may stay as long as you like. Words aren't always needed to show respect. Sahiba was moved. She told Nija the whole story, and Nija translated it to the women in Pashto. They took Sahiba to one of the cave-like shelters in the mountains that the men had carved as seasonal dwellings. The caves were open from the front, with heavy curtains hanging like doors, rolled up during the day. Nija explained how their tribe lived. Sahiba then asked about the old woman who had left angrily. Nija sighed. That's my grandmother. She's very superstitious. In her view, a woman traveling alone in heavy rain, seeking help, brings bad luck to everyone. The women who left with her believe the same. But before she left, she still gave permission for you to stay. Sahiba lowered her head. This is all my fault. If I hadn't left the house alone, none of this would have happened. Nija shook her head. No. This was written in your fate. No one can escape destiny. This small girl had spoken such a deep truth that Sahiba just kept staring at her. The curse of the land. After a pause, Nija asked, Did you gather any information about this area before coming? Sahiba replied, No. I only knew about Green Resort. I had no idea about anything else. Seeing Nija's expression shift, Sahiba asked gently, What is it? Nija looked around cautiously and lowered her voice. This place is cursed. There are jinns, witches, and spirits all around. Every night here is terrifying. It feels like they will destroy us before dawn. Sahiba was stunned. But your grandmother, the one who seemed angry. Nija cut her off. Several women entered to see Sahiba out of curiosity. The conversation paused. The women couldn't speak Urdu, so they communicated through Nija. After some time, the grandmother entered the room, furious. She scolded the women in Pashto, and they quickly left. Then she looked at Sahiba with icy, piercing eyes and said something. Nija turned to Sahiba with a pale face. Grandmother says you must not step outside this room, day or night, under any condition. No matter what noises or screams you hear, you must not go out. If you do, you'll be responsible for whatever happens. As she left, she gave one final chilling glare that sent shivers down Sahiba's spine. Nija sighed deeply, then continued where they had left off. You're in danger here, and you've put us all in danger too. Sahiba blinked. How? Nija looked out toward the darkness, then began telling a buried secret. Our grandfather was from Afghanistan, a great religious scholar. He came here with our whole family because his spiritual teacher told him to come and perform rituals to capture or convert the spirits, witches, and jinns living here. But he discovered this land was home to various tribes of jinns from different races and religions. He fought them, captured some, converted others, even killed a few. But 2 Jinn brothers, when he killed one, the other swore revenge. That was the beginning of a blood feud. Soon after, the men and women of the family began to disappear. Their bodies were found on mountaintops or in deep ravines, savaged, as if by wild animals. But when captured jinns were interrogated, they always blamed that same vengeful jinn. Nija continued in a low, heavy voice. Our grandfather became deeply disturbed. He was losing the war against that jinn and sacrificing many lives of our family. One day, he told my grandmother that he was going to negotiate with the enemy jinn. Before leaving, He completed a spiritual retreat, chilla, and gave control of several captive jinns to my grandmother for her protection. Then he left and never came back. Later, the enslaved jinns informed the family that the grandfather had been killed. That's when our enmity with this supernatural race deepened. The hatred now ran both ways, and any outsider who stayed with our family was considered a threat by the jinns. Sahiba was now completely invested in the story. She suspected Nija didn't know the full truth, just a rehearsed version passed down to her. But her curiosity had taken root. She wanted to uncover the real secrets hidden in this mountain valley. The ritual returns. Outside, the storm returned with fury. Rain poured again like a flood. The women and children retreated to their shelter caves. Nija sat silently, watching the downpour. Sahiba sat beside her, also gazing into the rain. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Nija broke the silence. "I don't think this rain will stop anytime soon." Sahiba replied, her voice soaked in gloom. "Me neither." Later, they had a simple yet delicious dinner. Then everyone went to bed. The night's final routine began. The grandmother, still in control of the entire community, moved from room to room, muttering mysterious words over each. She then dropped the heavy curtain over each room's entrance. Nija whispered, "When grandmother comes and does this, it means no one is allowed to leave until morning, no matter what happens outside." Sahiba asked, "You never go out at night?" Nija shook her head. "If we need something, we blow a special whistle hanging on the wall. But until grandmother allows it, no one steps out." Sahiba's heart wasn't at peace. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Her instincts screamed that something terrible was going to happen. The hoofbeats in the dark. Late at night, faint sounds of horses echoed near the curtains. Then came strange voices, as if a phantom caravan was brushing against the cave shelters, trying to enter. Sahiba looked at Nija, who was peacefully asleep like a baby rabbit. When Sahiba nudged her awake, Nija opened her eyes and carefully scanned the area. Then, putting a finger to her lips, she signaled Sahiba to stay silent. The sounds grew stronger, then suddenly vanished. Nija leaned over and whispered, "That was the Jinn caravan. They travel through here at night. But so far, we've only felt their presence behind the curtains. Don't worry, they can't harm you." Nija soon drifted back to sleep. The secret ritual revealed. Sahiba couldn't sleep. Quietly, she lifted the curtain and peeked outside. The shelter caves were built on a ridge, giving her a clear view of the open field below. There, at the center of the field, stood the grandmother, eyes closed, holding a newborn baby. Suddenly, she began twisting the baby's neck with her hands and teeth. Then, separating the head from the body, she tossed the child into the air. The blood sprayed into the sky. A dark shadow swooped down and snatched the baby's body mid-air. Horrified, Sahiba let the curtain fall and backed away, trembling. She now knew the grandmother was behind everything. The death in the morning. The next morning, Sahiba woke up to the heart-wrenching screams of a woman. Nija said little. Her newborn died during the night. Sahiba realized Nija only shared as much as she was allowed to. But Sahiba had already seen the truth. She was determined she had to get out of here as soon as possible. The weather had cleared. Sunlight beamed down. Sahiba requested permission to return to her car. The men helped her get to it. The car was still functional, but the roads were destroyed and would take nearly a week to be repaired. There was no electricity either. She checked her phone. Miraculously, it turned on, but the battery was nearly dead. She quickly typed a message to her father, letting him know she was alive. Before she could check if the message was sent, the phone died. The demon dogs return. Sahiba looked toward a nearby mountain peak and saw them. Several dog-like creatures, black in color, with glowing red eyes. They began barking and charged straight toward her. She rushed into her car and locked herself in. The dogs surrounded her vehicle, blood dripping from their mouths. A nauseating stench of rotten flesh filled the air. Sahiba struggled to breathe. Then she saw her. The grandmother, standing on the mountain ridge, watching silently. As soon as the dogs saw her, They turned away from Sahiba and ran toward her and began licking her feet like obedient pets. She looked directly at Sahiba and let out a monstrous laugh. Sahiba now had no doubt the grandmother was involved in everything. Nija's pain. Sahiba left the car and walked toward the nomad settlement. She found Nija sitting on a stone, looking distraught. "Why are you crying, Nija?" Nija tried to hide her tears but broke down. "That baby who died, he was my cousin's son. He was born after 6 years of marriage. And just now, my cousin died too. We weren't even allowed to see her face one last time." Sahiba's instincts flared again. "Nija, I think your grandmother is behind all this." Nija was angry at first, but when Sahiba told her what she had seen the previous night, fear and realization appeared in her eyes. That night, the same horrific ritual began again. But this time, Sahiba was fully alert, knife in hand, ready for anything. As soon as the grandmother finished putting everyone to sleep and stepped out, Nija and Sahiba silently followed her, moving through the darkness and hiding behind a large boulder. They reached an open area where the grandmother stood chanting strange incantations, eyes closed. Her voice grew deeper, darker. Just then, a woman, Nija's aunt, appeared, walking in a trance toward the grandmother, as if under a spell. As the woman approached, the grandmother opened her eyes. She raised her right hand toward the woman's neck. Her fingernails had grown long and sharp, like blades. With a single swipe, she slit the woman's throat. Blood sprayed into the air like a fountain. The grandmother gathered the blood in her hands and smeared it over her face and hair. The moment the blood touched her head, her white hair turned jet black, and her wrinkled face transformed into that of a young, beautiful woman. Her hair grew long, endlessly long, stretching as far as the eye could see. Then she let out a high-pitched, eerie call, and suddenly, red lights began glowing across the mountain peaks. The same black, demonic dogs came running down and gathered around her. Their howls filled the night sky, making it hard to breathe. Sahiba began to gag from the foulness in the air. It was so intense that her retching made a noise. The grandmother and the dogs turned toward the sound. Nija froze in terror. The grandmother pointed toward the boulder. The dogs charged. Nija and Sahiba immediately ran toward the shelter caves. Nija, being a mountain girl, climbed swiftly. Sahiba slipped and fell multiple times. In the chaos, Nija disappeared into the dark, while the dogs cornered Sahiba. They didn't attack, which meant the grandmother wanted her alive. Sahiba looked at the grandmother standing in the distance. She was staring at Sahiba with bloodthirsty eyes. "I knew you would interfere. Now suffer." She flung her head forward, and her incredibly long hair whipped through the air, closing the distance in seconds. The hair wrapped around Sahiba, squeezing tightly. Then, with all her strength, the grandmother slammed Sahiba into a rock. Sahiba's body couldn't withstand the impact. With a scream, she lost consciousness. The rescue. Meanwhile, Nija had reached her uncle's cave-like shelter. At first, he panicked, thinking Nija was some kind of supernatural entity. But after calming down, he listened to her story. It was about his own mother, and Nija's uncle was a man of integrity. He decided to act. Before leaving, he woke up the rest of the family. Nija, her uncle, and several others rushed down to the valley where Sahiba lay unconscious near the boulder. The grandmother had vanished. The women carefully lifted Sahiba and began treating her. Miraculously, she was still alive. A deep wound on her head had caused a lot of bleeding, but she survived. At the same time, rumors began to circulate about the disappearance of Nija's aunt, and now, even the grandmother had gone missing. The entire tribe began to whisper. Some defended her. Some suspected her. Others were terrified. But Sahiba confirmed everything once she regained consciousness. She told them all what she had seen. Now, even those who had once trusted the grandmother were doubting her. The outside world responds. By now, the weather had cleared, and the government had begun repairing the broken roads. Though not completely restored, they were now at least passable. Luckily, the message Sahiba had sent earlier had reached her father, who then contacted authorities. With their help, her location was traced. After a rough journey through the broken roads, Sahiba's father finally arrived to take her home. As she began her journey back, Sahiba felt uneasy. Something still didn't feel right. She was sad that she couldn't reveal the grandmother's true identity to the world. But she knew one thing: the seed of doubt had been planted in everyone's heart. Goodbyes are always hard. Sahiba stared silently out the window as the car drove on. The last trap. Along the way, one of the cars broke down. There were 3 vehicles: Sahiba's, her father's, and the government agents. The officers decided to stop in the remote wilderness for repairs. Sahiba, curious and restless, got out of the car. Not far away, she saw a patch of beautiful red flowers near the base of a mountain. She walked toward them. But the closer she got, the stronger the stench of rotting meat became. Just as she reached out to touch a flower, it opened suddenly, revealing a monstrous half-human, half-beast face inside. A long, purple tongue shot out toward her. And not just one, every flower around her opened, revealing the same kind of hideous faces. Dozens of tongues began wrapping around Sahiba. She tried to run, but the tongues held her tight. She turned toward the cars, only to see the bloodthirsty dogs from before were tearing the agents and her father to shreds. There were so many dogs it was impossible to even see the people clearly, just a frenzy of flesh-ripping horror. Sahiba knew her beloved father was gone. Bound and helpless in the grip of monstrous plants, she could only listen as the dogs began approaching her. She was exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. Her consciousness began to fade. All around her was darkness. Sahiba found herself standing once again in the same cursed field where the grandmother, now revealed as a jinn, had performed her rituals. But everything was dark. Pitch black. She looked around, and though she could see nothing, she felt the presence of others. Like her, they were helpless, trapped, and afraid. Sahiba shouted into the darkness. "Is anyone there? Please help me." From the distance, a trembling voice replied, "Nijas." "Sahiba. Grandmother has taken the whole family hostage. She won't spare any of us. She'll kill everyone." And just as Nija said that, she appeared, the grandmother, with her pack of bloodthirsty dogs, walking like a queen, her head held high. The dogs followed her silently, some in front, some behind. Her eyes glowed, and with each step, a wave of dread swept through the air. As she came closer, fire erupted in the center of the field, illuminating everything. The darkness fled, and Sahiba finally saw. The entire family, 40 people, stood frozen, along with Sahiba and Nija. All of them were surrounded. No escape. But the grandmother, she no longer looked old. She was now in her full youth, the form she had stolen with the blood of others. Her beauty was unnatural. Her face still, disturbingly elegant. But from her eyes and mouth dripped evil. She stepped into the firelight, raised her arms, and declared in a loud, commanding voice, "You will all die. Every last one of you. I should have done this long ago. But I gave you mercy. I gave you time. But now, I will end it. Your grandfather destroyed my family. He came into my valley, which belonged to my kind, and started killing. One by one, he captured our warriors, killed our elders, forced the rest into Islam. He made slaves of us. When I was the only one left, I knew I couldn't defeat him alone. So I became Muslim. I pretended to accept him, and your grandfather asked me to marry him. And that was my chance for revenge. 4 years, I waited for this day. And now, no one will survive." The ground trembles. She let out a horrifying scream, so sharp, so piercing, that the mountains shook. The frequency of her voice was so intense, people's ears bled, and they began collapsing to the ground. Their sense of hearing was destroyed. Then she opened her mouth and extended her tongue, but this time, it wasn't one tongue. It was a mass of branching, sharp tongues, each like a dagger. With one lash, 10 to 12 people's eyes were gouged out. She kept swinging her tongue. Each strike blinded more victims. Then, with her claw-like nails, she began slicing open throats, one by one. Blood flowed like rivers. The dogs were released. They charged and began tearing apart the bodies, feasting on flesh, ripping through limbs. But oddly, they left every head untouched. Aftermath: the 41 skulls. Sahiba. Nija. The entire family, all 40 people, perished at the hands of a vengeful Jinn queen. To this day, in the remote mountains near Quetta, the nomadic shelters still exist. In one of the cave-like rooms, there are 41 skulls. Locals say they can be seen to this day. People come from far and wide to visit the place. Some hear whispers. Some see shadows. But none ever forget what they feel in the valley of Tamshah. The Jinn queen who once loved, lost, and never forgave.